Welcome to the first after lunch session. I hope you all enjoyed your lunch in the sun. I ran for the shade. So I'd like to just make sure that you're in the right place, because having walked this far, it would be terrible not to be at the thing that you wanted to be, which is that we are looking at exploring computer science. Joanna's profile is in the blue folder that you got, so I'm not going to read that back out to you because I'm sure that you can read it. But I would like to introduce Joanna in the way that I know her, as a co-member of the board. Joanna is the person on the board who keeps us honest. So she brings up equity and diversity into the conversation frequently, and she does it in the most charming and lovely and gentle way so that we have our conscience pricked continually, and she does a wonderful job of it. Today's session, she's going to talk for a little while, and then she's going to introduce your other panellists properly, but I'll just name them. So we've got Suzanne, John, David and Anthony, and she'll be holding a panel discussion with those shortly. Thank you. Welcome, Joanna.
Thank you, and welcome to our session. I'm really excited to talk a little bit about exploring computer science, but as Margot alluded, I'm going to be doing very little of the talking, and we're just going to introduce what exploring computer science is, and then we'll have a panel discussion, so you can ask some of our teachers and coaches and myself any questions that you might have about this curriculum or the way we've enacted it in Los Angeles, or other ideas that might come up that you already have or that might be spurred from these opening slides. So how many of you, before I get started, have heard about exploring computer science before today? Okay, some of you, but not all of you. Great. So our program here is in the subtitle, A University K-12 Partnership to Increase Access to Engaging and College-Preparatory High School Computer Science. Quite a mouthful, but I think the important part is it's a partnership between university and a school district, and we're really focusing on that college prep computer science component. So trying to develop a curriculum and all the supports that go with a curriculum to increase access, particularly for underrepresented students, which in Los Angeles is the majority of the student population. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the background. This project came about after Jane Margolis and some of our research team did a 3-year study in the Los Angeles high schools. We were at 3 different high schools in these 3 years, and it was a qualitative research study, and our main question was, why are there so few African Americans, Latinos, and females studying computer science, even in a school district that was predominantly African American and Latino? And so we conducted this research for a number of years, and we had several significant findings, all of which, or many of which I should say, are documented in the book Stuck in the Shallow End, Education, Race, and Computing. And amongst the findings that I think are most pertinent for today are 3 different levels. The first level was about curriculum. What we found was that the schools that had the highest numbers of African American and Latino students had a very low-level vocational curriculum around computers. It was mostly cut and paste, preparing students to take jobs in the local community, not going on to 4-year colleges and universities to study computer science. And some of these schools you would walk into and there'd be glowing technology, brand new computer labs. It would look really great, but what we termed this phenomenon was technology-rich, curriculum poor. So great technology, very little actual learning about computing concepts within these courses. We also found out that there were a number of well-intentioned teachers in these schools. And so they'd be offering courses like programming or web design, but they had very little experience themselves studying computer science or teaching computer science. There had been no support at the district level. They had never attended a professional development session. Many of them didn't even know other computer science teachers. And as is true in many schools, they were the lone computing teacher at their school. So there was little opportunity to share teaching strategies or assessments or curriculum amongst their colleagues at the school level, just because they were so isolated. And they were often part of the math department or part of the business department, just placed somewhere else. So they had little collegial support. So it became very clear that this was not a blame the teachers sort of research research study, but let's look at the system and why the teachers weren't getting any support for teaching more foundational computer science. And then the third part was really that against what we were hearing from many of the administrators and some folks from the district is that students really did have interest in learning about computers. They talked about playing with computers at home. Some of them ran web design companies out of their house, and they were mostly self-taught, or families, uncles, somebody else had taught them about computer science. And the reason they weren't taking courses at the school is because they found them boring or too remedial for their own interests. And so we came up with this idea that it's not the students lacking interest, it's the schools lacking opportunities for these students to learn more about computers in an academic setting. And this became very important to us, and we thought, well, what's next? Do we just publish the book and move on? And our conscience told us, no, we need to do something about this. We have some expertise. We're a university in Los Angeles that has a great computer science program. We have the capacity to actually change some of these findings that we came out of the research with. So we formed an alliance with some key folks from the Los Angeles Unified School District, the Director of Science in particular, and also educational researchers, Jane Margolis and myself, and then the computer science department at UCLA as well to have some of that subject matter expertise. And together we were committed to building a program supporting teachers to develop more opportunities around computer science. And we dabbled for a few years around organizing around the advanced placement course, and we had some successes and some difficulties with that, which is probably for another talk, but if any of you were in Jan Cooney's talk this morning, she outlined some of those challenges. After that initial strategy, we realized what we really needed was not to build just this college-level course that was available in schools, which had a steep learning curve for both teachers and students, but a foundational, high school level, but college preparatory, so would have academic standing, course that introduced students to computer science. And thus, exploring computer science, this new curriculum was developed. And this is the current Exploring Computer Science curriculum. We have 6 units is part of this curriculum. Human-computer interaction, problem-solving, web design, introduction to programming, in which we use Scratch, a robotics, in which we use Lego Mindstorms, and finally, we have an applications and computing unit, which currently is a data analysis unit using either Python or R, and doing, we're moving towards a participatory urban sensing unit with some mobile phones. That's sort of a unit in progress, if you will. And we have been really successful in working with the state of California and securing math elective credit. So in California, this would be considered a G credit for the A through G requirements for California teachers. This would be familiar to you. For other teachers, what this means is when you fill out your college application, this is one of the courses that counts towards applying for college. So instead of being elective with no standing, like typical computer science courses are in schools, this one is actually advantageous for college-bound students to enroll in, and it's a year-long course. Thank you. So as part of our findings in that research study, I mentioned that there was little curriculum. We also realized that professional development had to be at the center of this course. You can take the 300-page curriculum and go teach it, but we really felt that a strong professional development program was essential. As part of this, we have 2 full-time coaches, both who are here. Actually, I don't know how John could be a full-time coach because he's also a part-time teacher, so I guess he's a 1.5-time everything. And Suzanne, who will be on our panel, and we'll introduce them in a moment. But we also have more formal professional development settings, or more traditional, I should say, a week-long summer institute, 3 Saturday follow-ups during the school year, and this ongoing coaching support and collaboration. So this is not a one-time you've been trained, go teach the curriculum. We want to build a community of teachers in order for this teaching of ECS to be successful. And we have managed to really reach the target students that we wanted to. Partly this was strategic of approaching the principals and getting the courses in schools that serve the highest numbers of African Americans and Latinos. Not surprisingly, if you're in those schools, those are the students you attract. So we have had quite a few Latinos, African Americans. You can see the numbers all the way down. This past year we had 921 students, and this was our first rollout year of exploring computer science. We do have a larger representation of females than many computer science classes do. We want to up those numbers, obviously, as well as we want to continue to build the African American enrollment. And this was in, I believe, 18 schools, David? 16 schools. So closing up, we have some expansion plans. We're going to roll out to a few additional LAUSD schools. We're hoping to continue to work with Oakland and San Jose to do some professional development for them and expand in those places in California this year. And we're also working with the state of Oregon and the cities of Chicago and San Diego to also expand this program. Not just adopt the curriculum, but do the professional development, which must come with it. And we'll have another cohort in LAUSD in 2011. But we have some findings so far. Some are really good and some are challenging. First of all, we find that this course provides what we call in educational research a counter-narrative to the notion that students of color are not taking computer science because they're not interested or not able. Provide the opportunity and they will come. They have come. So we see this as changing the conversation about diversity in computer science. Given engaging curriculum and stronger teachers, student interest is sparked. However, as this population in this room certainly knows, CS is vulnerable in the age of No Child Left Behind as not being a core academic subject. So we have a need for a statewide national policy change. And we're beginning what we call the California Computing Initiative to start addressing teacher credentialing and other issues to make this discipline sustainable. A few challenges before we turn to the panel. Capturing student learning of CT. A lot of the discussion in computer science education is how do you actually build computer science education, get more students in? Okay, well, we've started to tackle that problem, but how do we know that they're learning anything, right? How do we assess it? How do we capture computational thinking or computer science subject knowledge? This is not a learn Java in 1 year and write a few Java programs to assess it. So how do you have a foundational course across different topics of computer science and assess the learning? So we're struggling with that. Time and space with respect to coaching, building relationships, ongoing coaching models. How do you build those to meet the unique interests of individual teachers and still have a cohesive program? Some of our teachers have been very traditional, stand in front of the classroom, have students sit behind the computer. Our curriculum is built around student-centered learning and inquiry-based learning where students are working in teams, they're talking a lot, they're helping to actually pose the problem in addition to solving it. And that's hard for some teachers who've been teaching for quite a while under a more traditional teacher direct instruction model. And then finally, some of us want to write ourselves out of a job and not be needed in LAUSD so that the district and the teachers themselves will be able to self-sustain a computer science education program. Right now, we're funded under the National Science Foundation, which is wonderful luxury that this alliance has, except it's not sustainable in the long run as funding comes and goes. So we want to figure out what are the key pieces that need to be in place so this continues after the educational researchers step out. What is the ongoing university district collaboration that doesn't require this extensive funding? So I will stop here and turn it over to David, who will introduce the panelists and how the rest of the session is going to go. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm David Bernier. I'm the project manager working at UCLA, former teacher and curriculum specialist, and project managers like roadmaps. So I'm going to give you the roadmap for the rest of our presentation. We're going to have each of the panelists talk a little bit about themselves and their experience with exploring computer science, Following that, we're going to have a short student video where we interviewed students, and this will be an opportunity to see what they're saying about exploring computer science. Then hopefully we have a good amount of time for some discussion with all of you, with some questions you have for the panelists, as well as maybe some discussion of the challenges that were posed a little bit earlier. So that's the general plan. So to my left here at the end, we have Anthony Pagán, exploring computer science teacher from Thomas Jefferson Senior High School. Okay, and he's gonna start us off, followed by John Landa, who also taught exploring computers. You can sit down, it's okay, or stand up, whatever. Taught exploring computer science in the fall, co-taught it with a teacher, but is also a exploring computer science coach and curriculum contributor. And then Suzanne Schaeffer, full-time exploring computer science coach. So they're going to talk a little bit about their experiences. Hold the questions. You'll have a chance to give them questions after we finish the video. Anthony.
Good afternoon. Once again, my name is Anthony Pagán. I am a computer science teacher for Thomas Jefferson High School. It's located in South Central Los Angeles. Our student population is comprised of about 95% Latino and about 5% between African American and other ethnicities, I guess. 4 years ago, when I started at Thomas Jefferson High School, there were about 4 computer science, actually information technology teachers on campus. Every class that was offered was either a keyboarding class or a introduction to computers, which comprised of learning Microsoft Office. That was it. One of the first things one of the administrators had told me upon entering this school was, if you want to make history, here's the place you want to be. And fortunately, a couple years later, I received this wonderful email about the Exploring Computer Science program. So I attended this professional development, which is the summer institute that Joanna alluded to earlier, and comprised of teachers all throughout the Los Angeles Unified School District. Is a week-long process, and I got so much out of it, and I was really energized and invigorated to start the following year with this new curriculum. A lot of my students come in, they're English learners, so that's one of the challenges we face as instructors on our campus. This curriculum is project-based. So those students who may not have the English language down, the vocabulary that is required to master or learn the various skills that are offered in this program, they have an opportunity to shine through the projects that we have within the curriculum. There's already a technology gap between, the more affluent communities and the community that I service. And so exploring computer science is a way to bridge that gap. Some of the 2 units that were, I guess, most successful that I had experienced with this year were the programming unit, which comprised of learning the application Scratch, which is an animation software, and then the robotics, as Joanna mentioned earlier, it's with the Lego Mindstorm. One of the most rewarding experiences I had was on the very last day of school. Attendance is a major issue at my school, and on the very last day of school I had full attendance in my class. So that was a huge success in my classroom. Beyond that, I just want to touch upon the support. It's a community, it's a family. Whenever I have an issue, if I come across a stumbling block when it comes to the curriculum, I can call John, I can call Suzanne, I can send an email out to whomever, and I'll get an immediate response to aid me in my time of need. And I haven't had that experience amongst any of the other classes that I teach at my school. It's more like reinventing the wheel and trial and error as you go. As many of you are nodding your heads, you experienced that, that in the past. Beyond that, what I look for this upcoming year is just the new group of students that I'm going to be teaching, seeing their eyes lit up when that light bulb goes off, as you see many times with this curriculum, and the new challenges that we're going to overcome together with this curriculum and be successful. And so that's been my experience with exploring computer science. If you're on the fence of whether or not to try it, I'm a huge advocate of it. If your administration, is behind you, it's a great implementation into your school community. So thank you very much for your time.
So I wanted to start by adding something to what Anthony said. I was actually there on that last day of school, and I was truly amazed. I mean, okay, so the last day of school, it's a minimum day. Grades have already been turned in. Like he said, a lot of students don't show up. And, his class was full of students working on the robots, right? I mean, there's no grade incentive anymore. They're done, right? But they're in there working on the robots. And here's the best part. So the class ends, and they say, can I come back during fourth block because we're just watching movies? Can I get a pass? Will you let me come back? So, and I've had my hand in different things, but especially being a coach, I've been able to go to the different schools, and the amount of student engagement has been amazing. There's lots of stories like that where I've seen students who, in other classes, have been kind of like the C- type student, not really into the subject, whatever it is, math, science even, and they start playing with Scratch, and all of a sudden they'll come in on Monday and say, oh yeah, I downloaded this at home, and I was working on this all weekend because I wanted to try to do this. And the same thing with the robots. Students staying after class during their lunch so they could work a little bit more on the robots. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've seen. Let's see, what else was I going to say? Oh yeah, and I've going along the lines of the engagement. So then I've heard students say, "So what's next for you?" And some of them have said, "Well, oh, you know what? Now I'm kind of interested in maybe trying to find a career that involves robotics or something similar. Now that I've seen it in, in this class, versus had they only seen keyboarding or some type of office application or something like that." So, okay, I'll go ahead and pass over to Suzanne.
Play musical chairs. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background. I have a PhD in computer science with a focus on the social analysis of computing. So part of my being a coach was also very much a learning experience for me because I came from a university environment and I taught university students, and so I had to learn the world of the high school. And so we would have what we called the Coachmobile because John and I would commute to UCLA for meetings. So we'd have the coach, and I would be asking him questions about high schools, like what is a minimum day? So you can tell I had to start from scratch, not literally, well, the other scratch. But what I wanted to say was that for me, working with these teachers and seeing very much from an outside point of view what teachers have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, I'm going to get emotional, really was heartening. And don't smile at me. This particular group of teachers, although you've heard really glowing things about how wonderful things are, there's also some really hard work, some real day-to-day challenges that have to be faced. And there's some challenges that you're all high school teachers, or most of you are, so you kind of understand that there are probably some days that you want to say, hey, forget all this. And on top of that, then learning a new curriculum, and sometimes, like Anthony was kind of alluding to, sometimes feeling like I'm not sure what I'm doing, and it requires a kind of courage to be vulnerable, and a kind of courage to want to learn something new and to be the learner instead of being the teacher always, and to model for your students that I too am a learner, and I don't know it all, because in computing it's very difficult, and if not impossible, to know it all, that you'll never get to that place. But what you're modeling for your students is a willingness to be vulnerable, a willingness to take chances, a willingness to work with other people, a willingness to learn from your, not mistakes, but your detours in getting to wherever you're going. And so for me, I think this ECS is a wonderful, wonderful way of teaching students to be better global citizens. And yes, oh, by the way, they also learn some really cool computing things. And also that the way our world is going, the students really need to have a basic understanding about computing in order to be able to take over the world, so to speak, in a wonderful way. So I've just had a very wonderful experience being a coach and learning to be a coach and learning to be a high school teacher. So that's what I have to say.
Musical chairs, remember? Okay, fantastic. And Anthony didn't also mention that I think the enrollment at his school for students taking Exploring Computer Science is going to double next year because there's been such a positive response. And we've heard this at other schools as well. The word is getting out among the schools that this is a class that you want to take. So we're very happy about that. The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you a short video, about 6 minutes, of some interviews that we did with students, myself, and one of our grad student researchers at UCLA. And we didn't really know what we were doing, but we just went and started talking to them, and we were just amazed at the things that they were saying. We just wanted to kind of find out, what are you learning, what do you think about this class, et cetera, et cetera. And so this is just a short 6-minute clip of several students that we interviewed. So after we finish the video, I'm going to have you, just to, as the good teacher, watch the video, but also think about questions you might have. So after the video, I'm going to give you a minute or two to talk to some of your neighbors about what you're hearing and seeing so far, and then to come up with one question that you might have for the panelists that can continue our dialogue. Okay, so let's see if we get the video here.
There's a lot of possibilities that come up with the whole you being at the computer. It's not just, it doesn't stop at one. You can do a whole bunch of other things, like all those other websites that you program for, like organizations that need help or just to spread information. Mm-hmm. It's really helpful because you can get all types of information from the computer. Mm-hmm. And that would make you powerful to have like the whole world in your hands pretty much.
People didn't know that we had this class because I didn't want to take the regular one where you just type and type and type and you learn like the most basic programs, Word, Excel, and I think maybe if you get to it, the one where, what's the third one? Word, PowerPoint? Excel, and PowerPoint. That's as far as you get, and then you don't even know how to make your web page. It's boring. A lot of people, that's why they're like, that's when they think about computers, like computer class, that's what they think of, just sitting in the computer and typing and typing and typing. But then, like when you tell them what you're actually doing in this class, they're like, I want to take that class. I want to take that class.
I was really horrible at with technology, and that's the reason that I wanted to understand and go into a computer science class. And now I finally I'm more up to the pace of society, I guess, because they actually called me a Neanderthal. I really did not understand how to work computers, and I really enjoyed learning. And I'd always wondered how to make websites or anything else with robotics. Robotics was really fun for me. I never imagined that I could do something like that in school. So fun. And so I pretty much learned everything in that class.
Yeah, at first, when I went to a web page, I was I could never do that. And then now I know I'm capable to do that, so it's more easy for me to learn stuff.
Well, problem solving would relate to my math class, since we need to have good problem solving skills, and some of the problems that we saw in the class, they actually related to my own class, so it helped me practice those kinds of problems so I could improve on them. Like the one about I think it was shaking people's hands. You needed to shake, like five people needed to shake, I believe 20 other people's hands without repeating. And you needed to find the total number of handshakes. And I actually found that you could solve that using, it used I think it was an arithmetic sequence. So I learned about arithmetic sequences in Algebra 2. So I was able to practice that.
That's great.
And then I guess you also practice your writing skills. So that kind of helps you practice for your English class.
Okay, well, with the robots, we have to build the robot. So we have to put the robot together, and then we have to think like, okay, we need this piece and this piece, and it goes there. But like the way we have to turn it, the way we have to do it, and then once we got the robot together, then we have to move to the computers. And then it was like, if we wanted the robot to go in a straight line, it was a certain thing that we had to set up on the computer. So it's like, okay, if we do this and do that, like, what is the robot gonna do? Like, okay, it didn't go, it went straight, but then it turned. So that means we did something wrong. So then we have to go back and like look through the steps that we did and see what went wrong to why the robot turned, why it just didn't go straight. So we have to do that, think about that. And then we do like tests, and then we have to like, so we'll do a robot, and then we'll have a test on Friday, and then we have to think back to like Monday. Like, okay, well, yeah, I know we did this, but I got to remember, like, you know, like, well, why did the robot turn? Why didn't it go straight? Like, we did something wrong, so what was it? Then we have to write it down and stuff like that.
And it did.
And every time I'm playing the video game, I'm like thinking, oh, forever, or oh, it's a start, or yeah.
So you're thinking of the variables and the loops and the things like that. So it's given you, has it given you new eyes when you new ideas?
Yeah.
Okay. And so, what are you planning to take more computer science classes or less?
Yeah, I'm planning to get AP computers, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
You too. Okay, that's awesome.
Even if you don't have time for this, for learning or taking another computer science class next year, do you think you would take more computer science later on?
Yeah.
Or, yeah? Like when or where?
Maybe my senior year.
Because you're a sophomore now?
Yeah, I'm a sophomore.
So would you consider taking AP computer science or other classes?
Oh, if we have it, I would take that next year then. Instead of taking like Spanish, I would take that my senior year. But I didn't know we had that option.
Also, sorry. Okay, so now I'd like you, just based on what you heard from the panelists, what you saw in the video, just take a minute to talk with those nearby. And if that afternoon food coma is hitting you, stand up, stretch for a minute. I'll raise my hand after a minute or two to bring us back, and then at that time we can pose questions to the panelists. So what are you seeing and hearing from the videos, from the panelists, and one question you might have to ask the panelists? So that's your assignment for the next 90 seconds. Go.
Just one question?
At least one.
I got about 6 or 7.
You can type them down. Yes. Stretch. All right. Old teacher move. So at this time, we'll take your questions, and I'll just go like a 1, 2, 3, so we don't have to raise your hand every time. So the first person, I'll just choose them. You just ask me the question, then I'll just funnel them to the panelists. Okay? Anybody have a question? Okay, 1, 2. Anybody for a third? 3. Okay, go ahead.
Professional development. What's a week-long course like? What are you actually teaching during that period?
Okay, Joanna.
Sure. Stand up so everybody can see me.
Okay.
What we tried to do is actually simulate a lot of what the students would do in the classroom. So it's not us sort of saying, flip to page 3, this is how this lesson goes. Okay, let's go to page 4. What we do is highlight some of the main projects and actually have the teachers go through those projects in groups as if they were students. So what we're trying to do is not only model the content that's being taught, but the pedagogical strategies. Then we debrief what happened, what worked, what didn't work, how you might want to get students in groups, what the final work products might be, and so forth. So rather than doing this false illusion of covering the curriculum in a week, which we all know is impossible to have any PD that gets through everything that a year-long course would do, we highlight the main projects that really illustrate what the unit is all about and actually model the type of learning that we would hope that teachers would do in their own classroom. What we do that's worth mentioning is, since it's a 6-unit course, we cover about the first 3-4 units in that first week, and then we have 3 follow-up Saturday sessions, so we stay ahead of the teachers and do the remainder units PDs on Saturdays throughout the year. So instead of trying to fit it all into 5 days, we know we're not going to even get it all into 8 days, but at least that spaces it out a little bit. And as new issues might emerge around pedagogy or instruction within the first few units, we continue to meet and we can talk about those as we do some of the content for the other 3 units.
Okay, and just to follow that up, it's kind of a 2-year PD model, and that the first year is heavy on the content since they're going to be teaching the class for the first time. This summer, leading up to the second year, we're going to go deeper in the computational thinking, assessing student learning, and some of those kind of pieces. Number 2.
First, a little background. I'm Lonnie Weiss from San Jose Unified School District, and right now I'm taking the ECS course with Santa Clara. So there are a couple of questions. I'll ask one at a time and give other people a chance. So the first one is in reading your outline on your curriculum, you originally targeted juniors and seniors, according to what I read in it. My concern is the students I'm going to be teaching haven't seen that now. And so Anthony, I'm kind of like looking at you and saying, what did you do? Because I saw sophomores in here. Right. What did you do to deal with the fact of arithmetic sequences that they hadn't seen yet? Right. How did you get around the losing the kids when you wanted them to generalize the N?
Okay, good question. That's one thing that I think is really important. This is not cookie cutter. It's not like, here, open up the curriculum and go teach. What I found is it really challenged me as an educator, because not only did I have this very, very strong foundation, but I had to go beyond and find those supplemental materials to reinforce these new concepts, like you were alluding to. So for me, you know, I utilize what most people do is they go online, and there may be some math concepts that I hadn't seen in years, but I had to give myself a little bit of a refresher course so that for those students who had that deficiency, I can bring them up to speed. So that's kind of how I went about helping bridge that gap between students who, because one of the prerequisites we have is that they pass is Algebra 1. And a lot of our students have Algebra 1 in 8th grade, at least in our district. But that version of Algebra 1 and what they learn, there's a little bit of this disparity between the two in some instances, not all. I've had freshman students in my class that excelled majorly, and they came recommended, you know, from either the counselor or another teacher. They would do excellent in your class, Anthony. Sure, if I get that, we'll make that exception. It's definitely a case-by-case scenario, but that's pretty much to answer your question. I know it's long-winded, but yeah, that's how I went about it.
Sorry, I wanted to add something really quick to that question. So one of the things I've done in my class is, you know, for a lot of these questions, there's multiple ways to come up with a solution, right? So, you know, I'd say you can solve this however way you want, or whichever way you want. And that way, you know, a student that might have the Algebra 2 or trig background, you know, they might say, oh, this is a sequence, you know. But the, you know, Algebra 1 student would, you know, solve it their own way, maybe graphically or, you know, something like that. Thank you.
Okay, over here, the third one.
Yeah, I had two. One is I saw your curriculum online, was scanning through it. We're just starting a intro to CS. We're getting rid of the software apps. So that's sort of the teaching you were talking about at the beginning there. How do you feel about people essentially ripping you off without the training is question one. And the second question is, I've been having a difficult time convincing administration that CS is a valuable thing, and their definition of CS is computer skills. And so I get that moving on, and to try to convince administration, particularly my curriculum director and superintendent, but mainly the curriculum director, that computer science is really essential. How did you go about doing that at LA?
Joanna, you're the curriculum person.
Sure. So without training, it's we feel a little bit mixed about it. It's better than nothing. It's better than teaching keyboarding or Microsoft Excel formulas. It's not ideal, but what we've learned is you have to sort of work the district system, work the school system in order to get that training in place, and that's something that we've been able to do because we've had external funding. So I think that what we recommend to people is try to connect with other teachers teaching it so you can at least have some community, whether or not it's a formal district community or a different community, to support you when those questions come up at the very least. And we're hoping to expand, so we are beginning to offer for some schools the train the trainers, sort of PD sessions, and if we get increased funding to do that, we'll post that on the CSTA website too. And it's worth mentioning to people who are thinking about offering ECS is that 2.0, ECS 2.0 is what's on the Computer Science Teachers Association website right now for a free PDF zip file download. We just finished 3.0 last week. It'll take us a couple weeks to get it in place to upload to the CSTA website, but it is coming. It's not dramatic changes, but there are some significant changes, especially to the first 2 units and also to the web design unit. So if you're thinking about teaching it, it's not too much different from 2.0, but just be sure to check back. And then for your other question, how do you convince administrators that CS is essential? I think we all struggle with this. One of the most convincing parts for us is having an advocate at the district level do a lot of that work for you, who already has some credibility on that policy level. We also pull out the Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers that say something like 5 out of the 6 fastest growing jobs in the United States between, I think, 2006 and 2016 that require bachelor's degrees are computing disciplines, so software engineers, programmers, and so forth. So a lot of people are worried about jobs right now and getting jobs and which careers are happening, and there's been this sort of an illusion that because of outsource or is that the right word? Outsourcing to different countries that the jobs don't exist, and that is incredibly false. So I think getting over that and getting the parents and the counselors knowing that the jobs are in computing, and not only are the jobs there, but the well-paying jobs are there, that's a really convincing point to many school administrators. But I'm sure there's lots of other solutions in this room. Talking to people, because I know a lot of teachers wanting to offer computing have that exact same issue.
Yeah, and just to underscore also, the G credit issue was a huge one for us, in that at many schools they were just offering the basic intro, but once that G credit status came on board, that was just like, okay, we're going to offer Exploring Computer Science now just because of that. So that was huge. And then also, just a second, Todd Eula was our district person who was the science director but is now the principal of one of the big high schools. And so he has been instrumental in connecting with many people inside the district, getting memos done. You know, LAUSD is not every school district is like LAUSD. You know, it's just to put it simple, it's taken major efforts to get, you know, just memos done, to get that G credit status. You know, it was sitting on somebody's desk for like 6 months, even though the state had approved it. This person needed to just do a little bit inside the district. It was sitting on her desk. Sad to say, eventually she even passed away, and then, you know, and then had to go into somebody else. And so it's a lot of effort. We don't want to limit the, you know, or gloss over the effort that it takes to get something like this happening. Okay, questions? Do we have more than one? Okay, 1, 2, and then 3. We'll just, and then 4. We'll make it all the way across. Go ahead.
I got 2 or 3 questions.
Okay.
Students come into your class and say, it's in your course. You see somebody comes in the last few months of school. How do you deal with that?
Okay. Yeah.
Well, one of the nice things about it is that there are the different units. So, I mean, yeah, you don't want all your kids just coming in, you know, at the end, but, you know, since it's broken up into different units, they can kind of start off on day 1 with another unit, you know what I mean? So, yeah, so
go ahead.
And because it's a team project-based approach, that the student will be teamed with other students who have been in the class from the beginning, and they'll get to share their knowledge with that one student, so it works out okay.
One more?
We'll let you have it, sure.
Robotics. The robots. How many robots per student? I mean, how many students per robot?
Go ahead. Yeah.
So we've set it up primarily as 3 students per robot, and we set up 3 roles. So at the beginning, there's the builder, the parts puller, and quality assurance, and they rotate through those roles at each page of the build manual. And once that's done, then hopefully by that time there's kind of a team formed, and they know kind of their strengths, and then they can work from there. And so it's a team about 3 students per robot, and it works out well.
Okay.
Okay. One of the big issues, especially in schools here with basically disadvantaged situations, is the tremendously high dropout rate. So I'm wondering if anybody's been able to pull any information to the effect that students that are taking these courses are more likely to be retained. I'm sure you're not far enough along to actually track people going on to college, but you might be able to go out and pull that type of information.
We have an anecdotal piece. Go ahead.
Again, in Anthony's last day of class at Anthony, his principal was there, some other students were there, and I just got in kind of a side conversation with the principal, and there was a young man who was kind of sitting in front of the class, very engaged with what he was doing, and she kind of leaned over and said very quietly to me, well, this student was someone that we had been worried about, that we were going to lose all year, and here he was on the last day of class working with this. So it's, it's one out of the class, but still I think that he's not a total exception.
Yeah, if you can get some hard numbers on that, it'd go a long way to selling a lot of the things you're doing.
I think the other challenge with that, anybody who does research through a university, we have to go through human subjects or institutional review board, and they really don't like us tracking individual students. So we can get information on all the students. We can say, we can give surveys, pre-course surveys, post-course surveys, and say out of 500 students, this is how many replied this way before, and out of 400 students, this is, but that student level information of following them is something that the IRB, at least through UCLA and where I am at University of Oregon, has been very hesitant to do unless we can prove that it's a level of data that is essential for continuing this on. So we haven't fought that battle yet, not to say we won't, but it requires a lot of work in order to get permission to follow student level. We need permission forms from all the parents. We need to keep track of students. We need to get into their academic records, which is near impossible within LAUSD. So it's been a logistical challenge. That's the reason we don't have the hard numbers, but we are heartened by these anecdotes.
Oh, yeah. Who was number 3? Is that you?
One of us.
One of you. Okay.
Okay. My question has to do with the next year. If you grab the kids this year with a G-level class, which is amazing that you could get a G-level class. A G out of UC is amazing. I will talk later about that. But where do they go from here? If they're a sophomore, what can she go into? I heard her mention AP Comp Sci, which is programming. I teach networking and repair, which are not G related. I have web design and word processing at my site as well, which are not G. Where do the kids go from here?
Want to talk about that, John? Or?
Well, as a whole, it really depends on the school site, as to what classes you have available. At Southeast High School, there is networking, AP Computer Science. At one point, there was a video game design class, internet publishing, which was working with the school website. So, and then at different schools they have, I know your school has computer repair. So it really is site specific, but the idea is maybe, if there are enough of these students, hopefully the schools will put in more classes.
I just want to add to that. So I had the fortunate opportunity to actually participate in developing our technology pathway at our high school. We had to write our own charter for those of you who read the news, and all the schools in LAUSD that had to basically fight to stay a public school and not to get taken over by Green Dot and other entities. So the first course offered in the pathway is an introduction to computers. So once again, focusing on keyboarding, focusing on the Microsoft Office, so very generic. And then our second course would be the Exploring Computer Science class. We're working, hopefully, maybe after this year, the following year, we're going to have that AP Computer Science course offered at our school. Currently, right now, we're offering a network management class that I teach, a computer service repair, and then we just recently, actually 2 weeks ago, were certified to be a Cisco Academy at our school. So we're trying to give as many opportunities and options to our students with the exposure that the Exploring Computer Science program offers. You know, I have students now that, you know, they feel they have an aptitude to develop their own websites. So they have a direction. We have a very strong graphics program on my campus. So if that's the avenue that they pursue or are inclined to pursue, then there's a path there. So once again, just like John was saying, I guess it's all site specific, but you know, I'm doing what I can to give our students as many opportunities to further develop these skills that they're learning. So.
Yeah, and just to repeat, Exploring Computer Science, the purpose is not to feed kids into APCS. Not every student who takes Exploring Computer Science is going to want to take that pathway. Maybe they'll go on to something related to web development, networking, whatever it might be. But the students who do take Exploring Computer Science from teachers have said they are more prepared to do that. And teachers like Anthony, as well as another teacher, are now starting to think about going through that process of getting certified to be an AP teacher. So, you know, it's not necessarily a plan we have, but teachers, with their experiencing, are starting to think about that a little bit more.
Are any of the assessments individual or are they all group projects?
Assessments, individual or group projects? Do you want to speak to the assessments, anybody?
I mean, there's combinations of both. I think with the robotics, it's mostly group because we have, you know, only a certain amount of robots. But with like Scratch, there's plenty of projects that are individual.
And the website, individual?
Right, yeah.
Right. Okay, 1 and 2 and 3, yeah.
I just want to comment on the community feel that I see here and the support. And I teach in Hawaii. How can I be part of this?
Oh.
I told her to ask that question.
Finder's fee, huh? Well, yeah, we'll have to talk after our time here. 2.
I just want to know what's the role the universities play, and then that's where you are now. What do you say will be the role of the university going forward? On the
university.
The role of the university?
The relationship between the high school and the college going forward. What's expected to do?
I think that's a tough question. As I said earlier, I know as an educational researcher, we want it to continue without us. But I think that the partnership between the computer science department at the university and also the education department, maybe a little less formally, and the district is essential in both directions. I think we've informed the UCLA computer science department just as much as they've informed us about what the realities of K-12 are and what the realities of higher education is. So for example, the dean of the computer science department at the university has been trying for a long time to have more diversity amongst incoming students, and they don't know how. Well, this is a way that they can say, okay, well, it's not just trying to pick these students from the suburban schools, but if we invest in the schools that are 5 miles away from campus, and we send some of our expertise and so forth, we help develop some of these computer science units. That 6th unit, which is the applications in computing, we're working with the computer science department right now. They're developing a unit where we give students mobile phones. We actually piloted it with a couple teachers this year. And the students are using mobile phones to go out and map assets and issues in their community using an Android app and coming back. So it's that sort of technology of the high school students aren't learning the technology that was developed 5 or 10 years ago. They're doing what the graduate students at UCLA get to do. They're on the cutting edge of research and some really neat technology that is pertinent to their community. And I think as a result, the university people who have developed these very complicated apps and very complicated lesson plans also have a reality check of what is the reality of teaching in a high school. What is students like? It's not 2 hours of uninterrupted teaching time. It's, you know, taking attendance, and what does that actually look like? So the teachers and the university professors are getting to know each other and developing these much more authentic, honest relationships. And I hope that continues because it's beneficial to both parties. It's not just a top-down approach, which we often see in so-called partnerships between universities and schools.
Yeah, that said, we're really focusing the next year and next 2 years actually on this institutionalization piece within LUSD so that they have more ownership and, you know, finding the right people to sustain it. Obviously, we're also building capacity among teachers to have teacher leaders within the system to continue the work, but that is a big challenge.
If I try this out on my own, you know, next year, just try bits and pieces. Maybe I peek on your download of your curriculum. My question is, what's the key that makes it work? Because I mean, I know you have a good curriculum, and I know that you have good content. I'm guessing it's not just that you use robotics, or it's just that you use Scratch, but it's just that you have web design. Like, what's the key? What would I miss if I downloaded it?
Because of our time, I'm going to ask each of the panelists to answer that, and that'll be our last question, and then we'll just wrap up. So, who wants to go first? John. Go ahead, Anthony.
I guess for me, it's just making everything engaging. If you can't tell by my energy in front of you right now, I'm just a huge advocate for this program. I'm just pumped up. When I get up in the morning, you know, and because we have a block scheduling, so I have my students every other day. The day I have my ECS kids, I'm like ready to go. You know, I don't need that cup of coffee. I'm just pumped up. So I think the kids, they sense that energy from me. And of course, if I'm projecting out a positive energy toward them, a positive attitude about what I feel so strongly about, then they're going to immediately buy into that. Really quick anecdote that I want to give you, because I want to just touch upon the Android phone application. I was one of 6 pilot schools to actually have this program. So I had this past year I had 2 sections of Exploring Computer Science. So my more advanced section, I decided they were a little bit more mature than my first period section. So I focused on that core group to go through the experience of the data analysis portion of this unit, this pilot program. So you know, really exciting. They're getting these phones. You know, Google was like kind enough to, you know, collaborate with us and donate these phones through the Center for Embedded Network Sensing, and just the emotion on the children's faces when they come in. Basically, it's called a stress chill application. They either go around their communities, they take photos of things that either made them feel stressed or a sense of chill, basically. So we would loan the phones out, and then they would come back, and with these photos, they would automatically get updated to the SENS network servers. And now the kids are being activists and participating in their community. They're advocates for change now. We are empowering them with this curriculum, with this program. And it's like an amazing thing to experience, because now that bus that made them 20 minutes late to school, that is an issue for them on a day-to-day basis, and their teachers wondering why consistently they're coming in on 20 minutes late when it's really not their fault. Now they can take part in changing this process, okay? And so they're able to track this data now and present it in a, you know, professional manner to hopefully certain people in power within their community to make change. So this is like one great thing that I experienced with my students this past year. They're able to chart their data utilizing histograms and bar plots and things of that nature. So intertwining various curriculums, various course content, various disciplines. And that's the beauty of this. They can apply many different things to their experience with exploring computer science. And once again, two things. So there's so many hats, right? So I wear a lot
15
of hats,
seconds.
And there have been times where I haven't been able to make it to my exploring computer science class. So I'll call John. I'm like, John, I have this meeting I have to go to. Can you cover for me? And boom. So my kids do not miss an instruction time. Wonderful. What a concept, right? But if I had any other sub that I had to call through my district, it would be an hour and a half of them surfing the internet, basically. And so knowing that sense of community that you're experiencing, it's an actual practice. So that's my little spiel once again. And if you have other questions, feel free to.
Okay, well, I think we could have a whole presentation on that question, actually. It's really good, so we invite you to continue the collaboration with us after the session. Also, here's contact information. It's a little bit hard to read there, unfortunately, in the yellow. But feel free also to contact John, Anthony, Suzanne for their particular information. We have a website that's under development, but for now you can go to the CSTA website to get the curriculum, and as Joanna said, in a couple of weeks, version 3.0 will be up. So thank you very much for your questions and the good dialogue here today. And thank you.